accounting firm growth. I'm your host, Angie Grissom. Today, I'm excited to dive into making DEI a strategic priority in our Future of Accounting strategic planning series. Here with us today is Kimberly Ellison-Taylor, who is an absolute powerhouse. Kimberly is a global technology and finance leader with over 30 years of career achievements. She's currently the CEO of KET Solutions, a consulting firm focused on business growth, innovation, strategy, transformation, and inclusive leadership. Ellison-Taylor is a sought-after keynote speaker and has received many awards and recognition for her expertise in leadership. Kimberly is also the chair for the AICPA's National Commission on Diversity and Inclusion and is currently the 2022-2023 president for Beta Alpha Psi. We are thrilled to have you here. Welcome.
Thank you, Angie. I am excited to be here. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Well, so Kimberly, you have your finger on the pulse of the profession, and you see so many things. Many say that the industry has changed so significantly over the last several years that what once worked no longer works. Why do you think DEI is critical to strategic planning?
That is a great question, Angie, and I definitely want to acknowledge all of our colleagues who are actively working to make the profession better tomorrow than it is today. And I will tell you, for me, diversity, equity, and inclusion is more about inclusion and retention, which are two areas I think we really have to focus on. And those two areas really dovetail nicely into talent management. And when organizations think of talent management or talent leadership, depending on how they're considering it, they will see that there is a non-negotiable option to have DEI as a key aspect of all of the strategic plans, because you have to think about people, backgrounds, perspectives, because they mirror also clients, team members, strategic business partners, and also the regulatory or industry environment that they're operating in. So I don't know if I think any company of any size can completely ignore a key aspect of how they're going to market.
I completely agree with you, Kimberly, and you make such a good point. The current and future buyers look different than they did, even 5-10 years ago. And I think firms are really starting to sit up and pay attention to that and the importance of having different perspectives really at the table. So do you think that accounting firms are currently including a DEI initiative in their strategic plans, or do you see it more as an independent initiative? Is one better than the other?
It's 6 on one hand, half a dozen on the other. It depends. So let's take the option of the firms that are including it together. I think it's perfectly fine to include it together, but you've got to focus on culture. You have to focus on how everyone is able to thrive and grow, especially as it relates to career advancement, leadership succession planning, and also ensuring that you have a robust pipeline. And if you're doing that as an integrated part of how you are looking at how you grow and how you drive revenue, I think that's an amazing thing. For organizations who are looking for more focused initiatives in areas because they know they have some gaps, they know that there are opportunities they haven't fully exploited as it relates to their team leadership, formation, recruiting, retention, all of the things, I would say having a very focused dashboard and having very focused team members driving for success would also work. It just depends on whether or not firms are doing what they need to do in order to see progress in this area. And Angie, I think that many of them have the best of intentions, but we keep going in this vicious cycle, having this conversation because we're not really ready to do what's necessary. And when I say that, I mean holding people accountable and making it a required part of how we engage with one another, and then also looking for areas where we can continue to improve. It seems as if there are some organizations, not all, that want organically people to come to their own conclusions, that everyone adds value in the organization and that everyone should be able to thrive and grow without bias. And unfortunately, that simply doesn't happen organically, which is why we keep having this conversation over and over and over again.
I really agree with all of your points there. And I think it's so important when to put people in charge of certain initiatives so that they can keep their finger on the pulse of the culture of the firm, and they can come forward with ideas and they can hear from other people. And I agree with you that a lot of times it's around inclusion. It may not be necessarily a question of diversity in every single organization, but it's how people feel included in the culture and heard and understood in the culture. So I think that that's a really great point. So what other challenges do you see with DEI in general, and how can firms overcome them?
I think when it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion, it really maps back to a 12-step plan I wrote after the murder of George Floyd. And first, it started with just really listening, understanding that everyone's day in the life is different. And also understanding that in today's environment, many people are not leaving their issues at home as soon as they walk across the firm threshold or turn on the laptop in today's environment of hybrid work, that people are really bringing a lot more of their whole selves to work. And so firms now have a greater responsibility than they did when I was going through my early career. I didn't necessarily expect the firm to be my therapist, and I didn't expect the firm to help me cultivate a sense of belonging. But here we are. And here we are is a place where firms will find themselves having to operate multiple spaces in people's lives. And the ones who do it well will thrive and grow and have an amazing team with diversity of thought. The ones who don't will be training their competitors' team. And so in order to really think about what's next and how do we, not make the mistakes of the previous times, I think we have to then go to really understanding that everyone's backgrounds on whether they understand what this even is. What is diversity, equity, and inclusion? We make a lot of presumptions that people know, that people sometimes that we get caught up on equal and equity. Sometimes they think that this is dumbing it down. No, we're looking for the best and the brightest. And that is not mutually exclusive to looking for a diversity of thought team, a team that can provide diversity of thought. That's not mutually exclusive. And I think that the path to competitive advantage is certainly being able to leverage different perspectives to help drive year over year double-digit growth, increase mind share, market share, share of wallet. And I think that as we talk about revenue and growth opportunities, I think we should be talking about how do we build an Olympic team? How do we build a Super Bowl team? And that means not having every single person play the same position, because if they did, we wouldn't win. And we see it in sports, we see it and lots of examples in the world. But yet when it comes to this area, it's almost like the people who I think are the smartest people I've ever met in my whole lives sometimes enters a fog of politics, of wokeness, of things that in the big scheme of things is not really going to make a difference. So we have to really double down on ensuring that we give each of our team members the best opportunity to succeed by trying to understand what gaps and what weaknesses and strengths that they have, so we can work on those things with them and really provide career coaching. Because I know lots of firms have career coaches, but if your firms are not your career coaches aren't taking into account the unique background and perspective that someone brings, and that's purple people. I'm not talking about only Black people. I'm not talking about only Asian people, Hispanic people, Indigenous people, LGBTQIA people. I'm talking about purple people. And purple people for me means everyone And I think if we can do it for everyone, then we can advance it for all of us.
That is so powerful, Kimberly. I love everything that you said. This has been such a great conversation. I'm looking forward to diving right back in after this brief word from the Association for Accounting Marketing.
Whether part of a team or a department of one, individuals responsible for growth in the accounting profession join AIM to advance their careers and contribute at a high level to their firm's success. Members of AIM receive access to resources to help in their job and establish their reputation as a skilled professional, a network of peers who face the same industry challenges and can offer solutions, and a wide range of professional development and networking opportunities. Join AIM today. To learn more, visit the website at accountingmarketing.org. Again, that's accountingmarketing.org.
Okay, welcome back. So, Kimberly, what is your opinion on this? Is there an ROI tracking system or some way of tracking ROI that should be built into a strategic plan when it comes to DEI? And if so, could you give us an example of what that might look like?
I think we have measures for most things. We have measures on year-over-year growth. We have measures on how many sales we want, lead gen, measures across the full spectrum. Even if you're in technology, you have measures on response time or measures on latency, any number of things. So it would not be surprising to have talent leadership measurements as well, which is where I think diversity, equity, inclusion definitely falls. And so I think it comes down to, if it were me, I'd be looking at some very high level things that are just, to me, table stakes. Pay and pay equity is definitely one. Then I would be thinking about, if I had an organization that was 45% women and maybe the 55% men, but yet men are in 90% of the leadership positions, maybe there's nothing wrong. Maybe that's just the way it comes across. I'm open to that possibility. But I think when you're the leader, you have to challenge those numbers and you have to be curious. And you have to say, well, why would that be? You're in a metropolitan diverse city. Some areas I've been to, I haven't seen as much visible diversity. So let's say you're in a metropolitan area, there's lots of visible diversity. But when you look at your direct team and your teams, and it's 95% of something, as a leader, you would have to ask why. And if you were doing it for audit, tax, or advisory services, and you saw that audits were down year over year, you would question it. If you saw that audits were down in a geography, you would question it. If you knew that there were new tax planning strategies, strategic initiatives that are taking hold across the profession, certainly in other firms, and you didn't have it in your firm, you would ask the question. So ask the question, how are people doing? And are all of them thriving? If you know that the average time in a position is 2 years, and yet when you dissect the numbers and you look and say, why are there people who've been enrolled for 6 years or 3 years or 4 years, whatever it is, you'd have to ask the question. If you dissect and people say, I can see myself in the firm in 5 years on any of those engagement surveys, and you dissect it more and you look at people of color and you wonder, Black, Asian, Hispanic, purple people, and you start to see differences. Why is that? Yeah. And so by asking the question, then you would at least be aware. And sometimes the answer is the answer. But sometimes, more often than not, it's because there's more that we can do. And especially as it relates to recruiting diverse individuals or people with diverse backgrounds, is a better way to say it. The question would be, are you fishing where the fishes are? And so when people tell me they can't find people, I'm like, well, where are you going? And the places that they're going, they are like fishing at the airport. Because that is how far off they are with trying to identify and find people with diverse backgrounds.
Wow. Yeah, that's incredible. Kimberly, you probably run into this like I have. Um, there are people, many leaders are interested in doing the right things, right? They want to have the right strategy. They want to have the best people. They want to have profitable growth with the best kinds of clients. And they want to have a firm that is focused on DEI and a very strong culture. But there are so many people that are intimidated by that notion. So many firm leaders that throw their hands up and say, gosh, I don't even know where to start. What if I'm offensive? What if I do something wrong? And that is, that's a shame, unfortunately, that fear exists. So, what advice would you give to a leader in our profession who wants to incorporate DEI in their strategic plan and their strategy, that wants to make it a priority? Where do they start?
They absolutely should start with themselves and get comfortable. Get comfortable, understand what microaggressions are. And I know that's a trigger for some people. So call it subtle acts of exclusion. I read this amazing book titled that. And so whatever you call it, it basically is doing things, saying things, and exhibiting behaviors that make people uncomfortable or that they're offended. And in many cases, I will tell you, Angie, it's because people are just clueless and they don't know. And
Right.
so, one, as the leader, you have to lead from the front. You can't tell other people to get out there and do anything you don't. I think the other thing is focus on culture. I've asked some of the firms that I'm the consultant for if a lot of anything that you're trying to recruit. So let's say Black, Brown, Indigenous people, Asian people, if you got like an influx tomorrow, what would they stay? Would they stay? So culture to me is important. The environment where everyone feels included and feels that their opinions are heard and that people see them, I think is really critical. And then I would also ask them about how did they launch these initiatives? And it's like sales. We have to sell these things. We're selling change. And in some cases, the leaders, for the right reasons, said, this is what we're going to do. And I think that is the approach. But you have to tell people why. What's in it for them? Why should we do this? Why should we care? And then some of the team members that I've spoken to have said their team members were leading it and they didn't think that they were a credible source. Now, I would push back on that and say all of us can be allies and all of us can be a credible source. But the team members were like, well, what do they know about it? So I think we have to really identify the training that's needed to equip people so that the other team members can really hold themselves as, look at those leaders and say, yes, they are moving forward. They're a work in progress, but they're out there trying as best as they can. And I think those are going to be great factors. And then you have to keep working on it. And I would say it's talent leadership. Talent leadership. When people say DEI, I think they're starting to tune out. But it is the difference between someone who understands how to move people along on a journey. And when I was at Oracle, I had a number of responsibilities, but one of them was as a global practice leader. And I can tell you that I met people where they were globally, all over the world. And so you can pick any number of inclusion elements and think about what that might mean. But I also think that you have to figure out, how do I connect with someone and to get my point across? How are we driving business? We are hunting, we are farming, we are looking for new opportunities in areas we could be disrupted. Yes, we have reserve services. Yes, there are only things that we can do, but for how long? And we shouldn't take it for granted. We should continue to figure out how to engage with clients, how to engage with business partners, look at the supply chain, figure out what we need to do to keep our employees and team members. And that is not a notion of wokeness. That is a notion of someone who is looking forward to the future, looking around corners and looking for ways that they can drive greater and enhance improvements in technology, in talent, and in transformation.
I love it. Kimberly, we talk about mindsets a lot of times that the best leaders demonstrate. And I think some of those that you were talking about is genuine curiosity and empathy and resilience. Nobody's going to get it all right, but I think those people that are interested in getting out there and getting it going should follow your advice and really get to know the people, in the firm, get to understand what their challenges are, what their drivers are, how they might feel, and just keep working on it, right? Don't be afraid to fail. And for those people that are, in firms and they want to have a more inclusive environment, they need to be a support, right, for the leadership that's working on implementing these things.
Absolutely. And I would just say this, and I know we know this, but sometimes it bears repeating. When we signed up to be a leader, regardless of what role you're in, you didn't sign up to be the leader of only women or only men or only Caucasian people. Your role as a leader means that you are the leader for the entire team. And being the leader for the entire team means identifying places where everyone isn't thriving and growing and really trying to determine what can we do better, and taking that as a work in progress and understanding that we all need grace, all of us. Every single person that I know is fully capable of putting their foot in their mouths, and we all will. But when you think about it from a talent leadership perspective and how you're driving high performing teams and how you're creating opportunities for innovation, then it becomes a more powerful competitive path than looking at this as simply a soft HR initiative that is overhead. This is not an overhead issue. It is the difference between people who will succeed and people who will not. And I know there are some firms who are getting this right every day, but every day they're learning new lessons and they're applying it to the next day. And yet I also know there are probably some firms who, oh, Kimberly, we're tired of hearing this. Well, I'm thinking that in some cases, there are still some opportunities to make sure we get this right. And the same way that we do ethics training every single year, the same way we hear about the behavior of integrity and professional skepticism, and we hear that multiple times a year, I don't think there's ever any time that we could get tired of hearing about talent leadership and ensuring that we have a robust succession plan, that we're driving transformation, that we're creating stickier relationships with our clients, that we're increasing our market share, we're moving into new areas of opportunity, and that we're also ensuring that our customers will come and really have opportunities to use some of our other services beyond the ones that they currently use. And I think that means also looking at our internal team members, not just client-facing team members, but I'll definitely want to talk about the team members who are really enabling the firm from an administrative perspective. So whether it's the marketers who have a critical role in demand gen and brand creation and awareness in the marketplace, but it could also be people who are developing the strategic plans and working on culture and defining what innovative opportunities exist. Certainly could be the technology internal teams who are developing and working on practice management tools. Certainly could also be the HR teams who are recruiting, who are providing orientation, career coaches, and helping to advance team leaders. It could be the people in charge of real estate, or certainly could be the people in charge of finance, billing and invoicing, suppliers, customers, and all the other things we do. So it takes an entire village, and it's an entire village of opportunity to make sure we have an inclusive team where everyone sees that they can thrive and grow within our firm and our accounting environment.
We should never tire of learning and never tire of doing the right things. Kimberly, it has been great chatting with you. You provided some incredible insights for strategic planning and accounting firms. Thank you so much. How can our audience best get in touch with you or find out more about you and your work?
Thank you so much for asking. I feel like I live on social media these days, so they can definitely find me through LinkedIn or Twitter or Instagram. They can also find me through my website, ketsolutions.com, and they can also find me through any of the organizations that I'm affiliated with. Pretty accessible and definitely always willing to have a conversation. So thank you for asking me, and thank you for having me for this very important conversation.
Absolutely, my pleasure. Well, this is it for another episode of Amplify, the podcast for accounting firm growth. Thank you so much for listening in. Let us know what you think about this episode on Apple Podcast or wherever you get your podcast. We'd really appreciate it. If you want to find out more about Amplify and all of our episodes, head over to accountingmarketing.org. You'll find the podcast under publications. And if you'd like to find out more about me and my company, the Rainmaker Companies, head over to therainmakercompanies.com or email me at Angie@therainmakercompanies.com.